Shalom Tzipora. Tzipora,
Good.
good morning. I'm ready to begin.
Wonderful.
May I?
Bivakasha.
Okay. Just a moment. Second. Let me just exit full screen and then I'll start. Second. No. Tzipora, I'm just trying to see how I can exit the full screen. I'm seeing you in the center of my screen. I'd like to see, I'm delighted to see you. I'd like to see everybody. What do I'm not hearing you.
What about on the view on top? Can you switch the view to gallery view or speaker view?
For some strange reason, just a moment. Just,
Shayna, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay, I see. Yeah, I have a gallery view. Okay, good. Okay, good morning, ladies. It's a pleasure to see. Wow, now I see Caroline. Boker Tov, Caroline. You're in England, I presume. Yes? Are you in England or in France? In England. So it's bright and early for you. I see Shauna. I see Robin, Karen Lax, Mel. I don't know who Mel is, but I'm delighted to see Eliana, Karen Dub, my friend from many years ago, and I see Romy and others I don't see, Diane, anyone who wishes to turn on her video will make my life more pleasant. That's the choice is yours. Okay. I don't know if any of you heard Rabbi Moshe Lichtenstein's marvelous shiur last night. I listened to it. It is recorded and you can access it. In a certain sense, this shiur will be a I don't want to say companion shiur because I don't want to put myself on that level, but the topic is a companion to the topic that he dealt with last night. The term Ben Noach, if we ask ourselves, who's Ben Noach? The term Ben Noach is typically translated in English as a righteous Gentile. I think that's a mistranslation. And I think the proper translation is human being. there is such a thing as a righteous Gentile, there is such a thing as an evil Gentile. But I don't think that's the meaning of the term Ben Noach. And when we examine Sheva Mitzvot B'nai Noach, we should understand we're speaking not about righteous Gentiles, we're speaking about um, um, we're speaking about, or particularly pious Gentiles, we're speaking about human beings. Initially, the word human being was Adam. The term Ben Adam is found, which we use today to mean human beings. The term Ben Adam is found in the prophets. It's found in Yirmiyahu. It's found in Yechezkel tens of times when he's addressed by HaKadosh Baruch Hu as Ben Adam. It's found in Daniel. It's found as well, I think, once in Tehillim. But because the world was created a second time, as it were, with Noach, the term Ben Noach displaces the term Adam. But we're speaking about, when we use both of those terms, the same thing. We're speaking about a human being. And I think it's very important for us to realize that, because there's a tendency we have to pigeonhole people into I don't know, you belong to my club, whatever the particular club is, or you're an outsider. And the term Ben Noach is going to be um, um, all-inclusive, and it's an all-inclusive term. However, it's going to be displaced to a certain extent regarding the Jewish people by giving of the Torah, when we become obligated to the mitzvot of the Torah. But what I want to look at with you today is at the meaning, the implications of the term Ben Noach. And particularly a machloket between the Rambam and the Ramban. And then I'm going to look at the Meiri, and I'm going to look very briefly at a contemporary posek of the last generation. So let's start out with the Sheva Mitzvot B'nai Noach. Now, we know how we got our mitzvot. We have orderly formulations of the mitzvah from the Torah onwards. We have, in addition to the Torah's formulation, very quickly, Chazal began organizing the mitzvot as well as with the details of the Torah Sheba'al Peh. How is the non-Jew to know about his mitzvot? You have in front of you the source sheet. Do you need me to, is there anyone who needs me to share the source sheet, or do you have it in front of you? Everyone is okay. Okay, if there's anyone, please, you're invited to speak up. I can share the source sheet if you need it. There's a Gemara in Sanhedrin that I would like you to, I'd like you to look at with me. Tanu Rabbanan, Sheva mitzvot nitzavu b'nei Noach. Our rabbis learned the sons of Noach, in other words, human beings. Human beings are commanded Sheva mitzvot. And now there's a list of them, and then the Gemara is going to go on to explain how we know these. Dinim uvirkat Hashem, avodah zarah, gilui arayot, u'tfichut tamim, vegezel, ve'ever min hachai. Menahanimili. The 7 mitzvot are laws. We'll explain this in detail. This first category, dinim, is a category that we're going to be dealing with in our machloket and hopefully explication. Birkat Hashem, all of the rest are prohibitions. Dinim is a positive commandment. That's probably the reason that it comes first on the list. You ask yourself, in terms of gravity, we would put first Avodah Zarah, Gilui Arayot, Shfichut Damim, the three cardinal sins of Judaism. Why do we begin with Dinim? The Gemara chose to begin with Dinim because Dinim is a positive commandment. Every human being under the sun is obligated by the mitzvah of dinim, of laws. Then we go on to the strictures. Birkat Hashem is what we call in Hebrew lashon saginahor. It is the use of an opposite term when we don't wish to say something which is too vile. It doesn't mean blessing God, it means the opposite. But we don't wish to use the word curse and use the word God in the same sentence. And therefore, we say it in Lashon Sagi Nahar. We say it in the opposite, but everyone understands what's intended. So the second mitzvah has to do with cursing of as I said, we prefer not to say it, but we are talking about God. The third is Avodah Zarah, idolatry, Gilui Arayot. Um, 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 how does one say that in English? Prohibited sexual relations, utfichut damim, murder, v'gezel, and theft. The min hachai, theft. We're not talking about kidnapping as we are in Aseret HaDibrot. We're talking about simple theft. If you walk into a store and you steal a loaf of bread, or if you embezzle millions of dollars, of pounds, it's all under the rubric of gezel. And Ever min hachai, not consuming the limb of a live animal. You may ask, what's Ever min hachai? Why would anyone cut the limb of a live animal? And the very unpleasant answer is that before refrigeration, it was a convenience if one didn't wish to eat an entire cow. And the Sheva Mitzvot Bnei Noach come to say that is inhuman behavior. Now, how do they know? How do we know these mitzvot? Menachani mili. The Gemara says, as it says many, 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 many times. Where do we learn this? Amar Rabbi Yochanan da Amarka. Rabbi Yochanan is going to bring us a sentence. The Torah, the Torah says, "Vayetzav Hashem Elokim al ha'adam le'mor mikol eitz hagan achol tochel." This is the one of the first addresses that man receives from God. God commanded Adam, saying, "From all the trees of the garden shall you eat." Now, Rabbi Yochanan is going to Lidrosh. He is going to found that pasuk. We have that pasuk that God says to man, and Rabbi Yochanan says, "Vayetzav." The word "vayetzav" elu hadinim. Let me explain what he is about to do. We have ways in which the Torah is interpreted. According to Hillel, there were 7 midot. According to Rabbi Yishmael, there were 13 midot. Rabbi Eliezer ben Rabbi Yossi Haglili has 32 midot. These are hermeneutical principles through which the Torah is expounded legally. They're just as a map has a key to the map, similarly the Torah has a key, and this key is called the midot Torah nidreshet bahem. That's the way we understand whether an inch on a map is a mile or an inch on a map is is 10,000 miles or 50,000 miles. We need that key. And Chazal tell us we have that key, and that key is the hermeneutical principles. One of those hermeneutical principles is a very challenging principle. It is called Gezerah Shava. Gezerah Shava is when you compare usage of a word in one pasuk with usage of a word in another pasuk. Many of the mitzvot of the Torah are fully clear to us, but there are other mitzvot which are not clear to us. How do we, when the details are not written in the Torah, how are we to understand the mitzvah? And one of the ways in which we understand it is by comparing texts within the Torah, and that is called Gezerah Shava, the usage here and the usage here. I'll give you an example. We learn about Kiddushei Kesef, that Kiddushin, that a marriage can be effected through the agency of money. There are three ways a marriage can be affected, and we learn that from Ki yikach ish isha, if a man takes a wife. Well, what is taking a wife? In other words, the marital contract. What does it involve? Well, we have another pasuk, et hakesef hasadeti kach mimeni, that Abraham said when he was purchasing Marat HaMachpelah. We have the use of tikach in both psukim. Come Chazal in the Gemara in Kiddushin and say tikach. That means that you can accomplish Kiddushin by means of money. That's an example of a Gezerah Shava. Now listen to the Gezerah Shava and you'll see something incredible. Rabbi Yochanan says, where do we know the Sheva mitzvot b'nei Noach from? Vayitzav Hashem Elokim al Adam leimor mikol eitz hagan achol tochel. Now he's going to take apart this pasuk word by word. He says, Vayitzav elu hadinim. We learn the mitzvah that there be a legal system, that there be laws. I should actually say we're going to have a machloket between Rambam and Ramban, but Rabbi Yochanan says, "V'chein ha'omer ki yadativ l'man asher yisveh et banav v'gomer." The rest of that pasuk, Hashem says regarding Abraham, "I have known him, so that he will command his sons lishmor derech Hashem la'asot tzedakah u'mishpat." So we have the word vayetzav, and we have Abraham being chosen by God because he will command. You have the word command and you have the word command. From this, and in context of Abraham, the commands are he will command his offspring la'asot tzedakah u'mishpat, to do deeds of tzedakah and law. So from this we derive the mitzvah of laws. Let's go further. Hashem, the pasuk uses the name Hashem. It says Rabbi Yochanan, that is the prohibition against Birkat Hashem, against cursing God. Because we have another pasuk that uses the name of Hashem that says, he who blasphemes the name of God shall be put to death. Elokim, this teaches us the prohibition of avodah zarah. V'chein hu omer, in Aseret HaDibrot, the word Elokim is used, or Elohim, lo yiyeh lecha Elohim acherim. So we have the name Elohim in two places, from which we can learn that the laws correspond. Al ha'adam, zo shfichut damim. The use of the word Hashem commanded Adam. The word Adam teaches us not to murder. V'chein hu omer shofech dam ha'adam. Ba'adam damo yishafech. We have the word Adam used in two places. Hashem addressed Adam saying, it happens to be a particular person, but it means humanity. At this point, there's one member of humanity. And another pasuk regarding spoken to Noah says, one who spills the blood of an Adam shall be put to death. So from here we learn that it is prohibited to murder. Lemor, the word lemor teaches us about Giloy Arayov, because we have a pasuk in Yirmiyahu that says lemor, Hein yishalach ish et ishto v'achem eito v'ayta le'ish acher. Lemor is used in regarding Yirmiyahu's horror at the fact that a woman will go from one man to the next. Mikol et hagan. From that we learn velo gezel. Man is permitted to eat of all the trees of the garden. Here it's not Gzera Shava, it is reasoning. He is not permitted to steal. He's permitted to eat of the fruit, but he is not permitted to eat the limb of a living animal. Now, because we're a small group, I invite you to answer me. What's perplexing about this Gemara? Do you understand this Gemara? I've just explained the Gemara to you. Do you understand it? Do you see a fault in this Gemara?
It's odd because we have the word lemor many times in the Tanakh. It's almost
we have
like
the word Hashem many times.
Many
In the
times.
Torah, not in the Tanakh, in the Torah. And we have many of these words, or all of these words, which are used as a proof, are used all the time. I don't know how many times the name Hashem appears in the Torah. So why is this specific derivation made? And I think the answer is, I've not found this anyplace, but I will tell you how I understand this Gemara. I think the answer is that there are two kinds of Gezerah Shava. This is not me speaking, this is well known, because I'll discuss this. There is a Gezerah Shava, which is determinative, and there's a Gezerah Shava, which is didactic. Determinative means you don't know how to affect Kiddushin, and therefore you look for a pasuk which also involves a legal process, and you're able to learn by parallel usage. You learn from Yikach and Tikach. On the other hand, there is a Gezerah Shava, which is what I would call didactic. It enables us to organize and to remember. We may have received the law as an oral tradition, or the law may come from the law is part of our Torah Shabbal Peh. Let's just put it that way. However, we connect it with a pasuk in the Torah in order that we can remember it. And this pasuk, in my opinion, Rabbi Yochanan is saying, gives us a hook on which to hang the Sheva Mitzvot so we can remember them. We can memorize this pasuk, Vayisaf Hashem Elokim al Hadam Lemor Mikol Eitz Ganachol Tochel. And then we remember each piece, and we remember the Sheva Mitzvot B'nai Noach. If that's the case, my reading is correct. From where do we know the Sheva Mitzvot B'nai Noach? And I think this is critical. I think Chazal are telling us, or Rabbi Yochanan is telling us, that we don't need a special mitzvah in order to know the Sheva Mitzvot B'nai Noach. Human beings are created b'tselem Elokim, in the image of God. And Tselem Elokim means that there's a neshama in a human being which knows the difference between right and wrong, which is capable of applying an understanding of how the world works, how society works, what is right and what is wrong. That ethical sense is implanted in the human being, and there does not, in my opinion, Rabbi Yochanan is saying, needs to be a command given, revealed to human beings about Sheva Mitzvot B'nai Noach. Taryag Mitzvot is a different matter, and therefore we have revelation at Sinai. But the Sheva Mitzvot B'nai Noach are imprinted upon the soul, upon the neshama of the human being. And you don't need anyone to tell you these Sheva Mitzvot. Yes, Shona.
Then how does he deal with Aseret HaDibrot?
Aseret HaDibrot are spoken to the Jewish people, and Aseret HaDibrot are not necessarily our central, the only central principles of our faith. There
Right,
are
but
other.
it's still written, and so many of us feel that they're intuitive. Why bother?
That's another question. I would rather not answer it at this
Okay.
point because I want to stay on topic and move from here to
Right.
the.
But you were discussing almost like an intuitive feeling, so those are the mitzvot b'nai Noach.
Correct. A sense that this is correct. The answer to your question has been discussed through the ages. Rav Sadia Gaon discusses it in great length, but I'd like to stay on. I'd like to stay on topic. From here, we proceed to the episode of the massacre in Shem. I think the details are fairly familiar to us. Shem's rape of Dinah, kidnapping and rape of Dinah. I don't know if the word kidnapping is precise enough. He took Dinah by force. He didn't take her surreptitiously. He took Dinah violently by force, and he committed what he committed with her. And then afterwards, Shem and Papa Hamor show up at Yaakov's home in order to make an offer to them. I think Papa Hamor is not very pleased that the crown prince has once again acted with a sense of entitlement. I doubt that this is the first time he has gotten his father into trouble, and his father knows that there's a very large group of people encamped outside of Shem, and so he comes to make an offer to be one people. We'll give you our daughters. We will marry your daughters. And the brothers, as you know, in Yaakov's presence, answer Shem and Hamor, essentially saying, we will do what you want, however, only if you circumcise yourselves, and then we will be one nation. If you circumcise yourselves. There's a very different reaction to this in several places. I will see if by the end of this shiur I'm able to get to what my husband, Zichrono Livracha, wrote about this. I'm going to try. The first comes in our source number 2, which is Rambam in Hilchot Melachim. This is the 12th century, and he answers us there what does the mitzvah of dinim involve? He says as follows: "Chaitzad mitzuvin hein al dinim." In other words, what are the details of the Gentiles mitzvah of dinim? Chayavim lahoshiv dayanim v'shoftim b'chol pelech u'pelech. They must establish a court system that is accessible in every quarter of the country. Ladun b'sheish mitzvot elu. And what's the mandate of the court? To judge for the other 6 mitzvot. Now, you remember when we went through the mitzvot, we said there's one positive commandment, and that's the mitzvah of dinim, and there are 6 negative commandments. So Rambam says, what's the mandate of the court system? Sheva mitzvot b'nei noach dinim means that every society needs to establish courts. And these courts need to be not one central court for the entire country or civilization. They need to be courts, area courts, who will then judge for the other 6 mitzvot. Now, Rambam is going to say 2 things about the obligation and 2 things about the punishment. The obligation is lahoshiv dinim, lahoshiv dayanim, to establish judges, and number 2, that those judges will judge for the Sheva Mitzvot B'nei Noach. Ulahazhir et ha'am, and they will also teach the people, they warn the people. ובנוח שעבר על אחת משבע מצוות אלו ייהרג בצייף. A Gentile who violates one of these mitzvot is put to death by the sword. ומפני זה נתחייבו כל בעלי שכם הריגה, שהרי שכם גזל והם ראו וידעו ולא דנוהו. He says that for this reason, that a Gentile who violates one of those 6 prohibitions is liable to the death penalty. Therefore, the sons of Yaakov carried out their obligation under Sheva Mitzvot B'nei Noach by putting the people of Shechem, the men of Shechem, to death. And he says, and this is the second point, that they witnessed the crime and they didn't prosecute Shechem for what he did. So Rambam is saying here 2 things. He's saying, what are what's the obligation of Sheva Mitzvot B'nei Noach? You need to set up a judicial system. And number 2, those judges are going to judge for the other 6 mitzvot. As far as punishment goes, a violation, he learned this from the Gemara, of course, violation of Sheva Mitzvot B'nei Noach comes with the death penalty by the sword. And one is liable not merely if one commits the sin, but if one witnesses the sin and does not prosecute for this sin, then one is equally liable. And for that reason, he says, when the sons of Yaakov responded on the 3rd day, when the people of Shem were weak and they went into the city and they killed all of the males, this wasn't a massacre. What this was is a correct carrying out of what the mitzvah demands. That's Rambam's view. Ramban takes issue with this. Ramban is 13th century Spain, eventually Eretz Yisrael, and Ramban is deeply troubled by what the sons of Yaakov did in Shechem. And I brought you a lengthy part of Ramban. We're not going to read it all. We will read a portion of it. Ramban wants to know, how could the righteous sons of Yaakov have committed a deed of this sort? A horrific deed of this sort, in which they go into the city and they kill people who are not related to the sin. So he says, he brings Rambam. He then says it's actually only 2 of the sons of Yaakov who committed this. All of the sons made the proposal. They presumably took counsel together, stepped aside, came back with their offer, and their intent was presumably to execute Shem and Hamor, the guilty parties, but then to free Dinah and to take Dinah out of the palace where she is being held captive. Ramban then goes on to expound his view of Shefa Mitzvot B'nai Noach in the third paragraph. He says, if it was a mitzvah to go and do what they did, Yaakov, rather than reproaching them, and tens of years later on his deathbed, he reproaches them in harshest of terms. Shimon v'Levi achim kleicha mas machoteim, b'todam al tavo nafshi, b'kalam al techad fodiki, b'apam hargu ish, etc. At the time of the massacre, he says as well, you've made me stink in the noses of all who dwell in the country. That is, if Rambam were correct, Yaakov Avinu should have been the first one to get up and to execute them. And if he was fearful of doing so, he certainly should not condemn his son for following the mitzvah. So says Rambam, here's what my disagreement with Rambam is. He says, I'm going to tell you this orally and then we'll read it together. He says, my disagreement is on 2 points. It's on the definition of the mitzvah and it's on the punishment for the mitzvah. Regarding the definition of the mitzvah, in my opinion, says Rambam is certainly correct that it is a mitzvah to appoint judges in every community. However, in every area, but he says the judges have a mandate which goes far beyond the 6 mitzvot. He's going to tell us that the mandate is so broad that it includes Parshat Mishpatim, Bava Kama. He's not going to use these words, but you'll see that that's what he's talking about. Bava Messiah, they have to have their own Bava Batra. He disagrees with him as well as the punishment. Chazal say, Azharatan hi mitatan. Their warning is their death penalty. This is interpreted as meaning Azharatan, their negative precepts, says Ramban, carry a death penalty. However, their positive precept does not carry a death penalty. And he says, if you look at Tanakh, you don't see people being put to death for violating the 7 mitzvot b'nei Noach. But he says that the death penalty applies to the negatives. It doesn't apply to the positive. And he goes on to say that the prohibition of lo taguru mipnei ish, prohibition upon the judge from recusing himself when he is afraid of the defendant. A mafioso comes before him and the judge doesn't want to prosecute him, so he conveniently has to go on vacation to Eilat. That's called lo taguru mipnei ish, a violation of the fact that a judge is not permitted to fear. He's not permitted to fear a person. He has only one address for fear, and that's Yirat Shamayim. It's very good advice for all of us. So um, he says what occurred was a massacre. And I'm going to read two of the paragraphs, two or three, and show you Ramban's conclusion, and then we'll go on to Meiri, and then we'll move into the 20th century. The third paragraph, Al dati hadinim shemanu livnei Noach b'shem mitzvot shelahem, אינם להושיב דיינים בכל פלך ופלך בלבד, אבל ציווה אותם בדיני גניבה והונאה ועושק ושכר שכיר ודיני השומרים ואונס ומפתה ואבות נזיקים וחובר בחברו ודיני מלווה ולווה ודיני מקח וממכר וכיוצא בהם כעניין הדינים שנכתבו ישראל. Anyone who reads these words is stunned, because you read a list that's basically giving us Parshat Mishpatim, and it's telling us the laws in Mishpatim, not the specific laws of Shalosh Pamim Shana Yera'eh Kol Zuchurcha, Aliyah L'Regel is not there. But the mitzvot of Mishpatim, the list that he gives, theft and treachery and withholding a salary, and the laws of shomer chinam, shomer tzachar, not raping a woman, not mefateh, not seducing a woman, avot nezikim, the basic principles of damage, etc., etc., etc. We have huge masechut in the Gemara about these dinim, and Ramban is saying that's what dinim means. Dinim means that a person, as a human being, has a responsibility to know the difference between right and wrong. This is all embracing. A society is obligated to be a just society. But Moshe Lichtenstein last night spoke about the difference between mishpat and chesed. There is such a thing as going beyond lifnim mishurat hadin, but basic law, the basic ability of human beings to live together without violating each the basic. I'm looking for a different word instead of rights. Without doing harm to another individual is commanded in Parshat Mishpatim, and you have Masechet in the Gemara, and says Ramban, this is equally applicable to the non-Jew as to the Jew. We know details, for instance, the punishment. If you steal a lamb, the punishment is different than if you steal a shofar. But the punishments may be different, but the basic prohibition, you can't steal a lamb, you can't steal a shofar, you can't steal a tea kettle, you can't steal $1 million. This is something which a human being knows. Okay, then we go on to Ramban saying, ונהרג עליהם אם גנב ועשק או אנס ופיתה ביתו של חברו או שהדליק קדישו וחבל בו כיוצא בהם. And if he injured his fellow human being, or if he stole, all of these are forms of injury, he is put to death. ומכלל המצווה הזאת ויושיבו דיינים גם בכל עיר ועיר כישראל, they're obligated to set up courts in every city like Israel. However, if they don't do that, they are not put to death. This is their passive commandment. Below I'm going Sanhedrin, it says only Azara shelahem hi mitatan. Below Karei Azara elam niya balav. Says Ramban, the meaning of Azaratan hi mitatan is that negative precepts carry a death penalty, not a positive commandment. And then he goes on to say, I'm going to say this orally because I wish to read inside the Meiri and further. He says why did the two sons of Yaakov go out and massacre the people of Shem? Because they were looking for revenge. And the blood of the people of Shem was to them as water, and they assumed that the Brit Milah that the people of Shem performed was in order to satisfy the king and the prince, that there wasn't any authentic religious intent here, and therefore the Brit Milah is worthless. Comes Ramban and says, but that's not what Yaakov Avinu felt. And Yaakov Avinu was prepared to carry out the agreement that he made with them because they were bystanders. They were not obligated by Sheva Mitzvot B'nai Noach to prosecute their crown prince. No one wants to prosecute a crown prince. You still get into trouble if you do that. It would have been an act of chassidut if they did, but Ramban says one cannot put someone to death for being less honorable than we would wish him to be. He says, who knows, the people of Shem might have done tshuva. How can we say that the people of Shem who performed Brit Milah with the idea of becoming part of Klal Yisrael were not going to become faithful followers of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? As far as Ramban is concerned, this is an atrocity. As far as Rambam is concerned, this was a mitzvah. You have two very, very different views here. Now, if you look at the second side, you'll see something very interesting. I'm going to try to wrap this up now orally. In source number 4, Rav Menachem HaMeiri in Provence in the 13th century distinguishes between Ovdei Avodah Zarah, pagans, and people who are gedurim b'darkei hadatzot, people of religion, even if their religion is very far from our religion, but people who have a sense of religion. And he says as follows: we're told in the I left it on the table. The Gemara in Baba Kama Kuf Yud Gimel tells us that it is prohibited to steal from a Knaani. A Knaani means a pagan. Rav Huna says that, but Rav Huna says you don't have to return his Aveda. If you find property belonging to him, you find a wad of money belonging to him, you don't have to return it. You're not permitted to steal from him, but you don't have to return his Aveda. Rabbi Pinchas Ben Yair says that's only if there's no Chilul Hashem involved. If there's a Chilul Hashem involved, you've got to return it. And Shmuel then goes on to say, yeah, but if he makes a mistake, if he, instead of giving you change, giving you 100 shekel, he, by mistake, hands over to you 200 shekel. Or if he, instead of writing on his check 2 zeros, he writes on his check 4 zeros. Rabbi Shmuel says, if it's a mistake, you can take it. I don't know about writing on the check because that's very traceable, but you have a distinction. Meiri says this doesn't apply to nations who have a sense of religion. What does having a sense of religion means? It means you have a sense, even if it's not our religion, that there's someone higher than you. You have a sense that you don't make the laws through which society lives. You can't live next to someone who doesn't follow the Seva Mitzvot B'nai Noach. But says Meiri, if we have someone and people who have a sense, who have a religion, the laws are the same in terms of our behavior to them as they are to Israel. Now, two more things. Number 5 is the great Rabbi Henkin, my husband's grandfather. He wrote, and I'm going to let you read this yourself, regarding Azharatan, he mitatan, their negative precepts are punishable by death, by execution. He said, what that means is the courts are permitted, not that they are obligated to impose execution. If you have a child, this is now what I'm saying. Let's say you have a teenager who steals bread from a store. So we know what Islamic law says about that. The courts are permitted to put to death for the Sheva Mitzvot B'nai Noach, or but not that they are obligated to. And when Chazal say there are no shiurim for B'nai Noach, in other words, the amount that is stolen is not a factor. What they mean is not that the courts may not impose, or the legislators may not impose shiurim. What they mean is that we have prescribed shiurim for us. We have a kazait for this, and we have another measure for that. They don't. But that doesn't mean that all sins are equivalent and that all punishments are equivalent. This is in the hands of the legislators. What is required is that there be legislation. Let me end as follows with source number 6. During my husband's illness, we were blessed that he was able to put out his last sefer, which came out in the month of July. It is a gem. It is called Mahalachim B'Mikra. It's available only in the Hebrew. It is available from Nishmat, and it's his discussion of issues raised in the Torah. And when he discusses Shem, he says as follows. He asks, what was, I have in front of me only 2 pages. I think the 3rd page you have in front. I'm going to summarize what he says. He says, he asks the question, did Yaakov sincerely make the offer? His sons verbalize the offer, but the offer is, of course, coming from Yaakov, that they be one people? And his answer was yes. Why? Shalem ir Shechem. My husband says that the name Shalem occurs for another city as well. There are 2 cities. It's not uncommon for there being more than one biblical city with the same name. You find this quite a number of times. He says there must be a kinship between the 2 cities. The other city that has the name Shalem is what? We have a king in Breshit who's the king of Shalem. Who was that? Melchizedek. I see, Shona, that you said that. Melchizedek Melech Shalem. Abraham gave him Maaser. He was a Kohen Tekel Elyon. His beliefs are not identical with that of Abraham, but there is a kind of monotheism there. And what my husband says is, if Shem was called initially Shalem, there must have been a religious kinship between Shalem of Shem and Shalem of Melchizedek, and that has to do with belief in God, even though they may have had a hierarchy in which, yes, they have Kel Elyon, but they have other secondary gods, as distinct from us. We have one God. Yaakov, looking at Eretz Canaan, which he returned to, expected that he would need to establish a household, a people. He already has many sons. He's going to have to marry them off. And that he thought there was here a building block of the Yehud, the destiny of Abraham's descendants, in his joining with the people of Shem. In other words, Yaakov viewed their circumcision as giur, that they have now converted, they have taken on our beliefs, and we will now welcome them into the fold and build upon this. Anyone who wants to read more and read in greater detail can read within the book itself. I hope that in this shiur I clarified that just as God makes demands of the Jew, God makes demands of people, and that determines how we relate to people. People means all people. How we relate to people. It doesn't mean that we let someone who wishes to murder us. That's not what I'm saying. But it does mean that we have a basic expectation. We, the Jewish people, we, the people of Halakha, that people have a responsibility to be just. Thank you very much. I think we have finished our time, exhausted our time fully, so I'm going to end here. Shalom, shalom, and I'm so pleased to see all of you.